A Millionaire CEO was sorting through his mail when he opened a letter from a child, and what he read inside left him speechless and shaking. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. Logan Pierce had built his entire life around success. From a young age, he was the child who sold candy bars door to door with a relentless determination, saving every penny until he could invest in his first small venture. Over the years, that raw ambition evolved into a finely honed skill for business, and by 35, he was at the helm of an international tech empire. People in the industry whispered about his uncanny ability to foresee market trends, the secret behind his meteoric rise. But for all his power and influence, Logan's days began and ended in solitude, high above the city in a penthouse where no one waited but his own echo. Often he told himself that loneliness was a small price to pay for greatness. In the hush of a late autumn evening, Logan returned to his penthouse after a particularly grueling board meeting. He removed his tie, dropped his briefcase by the door, and collapsed onto the couch. That was when he noticed a plain white envelope on his coffee table. No return address, no indication of who might have placed it there. Immediately, his instincts flared. The building's security was stringent, and personal deliveries were almost unheard of. He picked up the envelope, turning it over in his hands. Something about its weight felt ominous, as though the paper itself carried a hidden burden. With a quick tear of the seal, he withdrew a single sheet of lined paper, and his heart constricted at the sight of a child's handwriting. "Dear Mr. Pierce," it read, "my name is Oliver. I'm 12 years old, and I think you might be my dad. I'm sorry if this is weird, but my mom used to say you were a big deal, and I've tried really hard to find you." The words were uneven, some letters tilted at awkward angles, but it was the content that sent Logan's mind reeling. A child claiming he might be Logan's son. He reread the letter twice, searching for any clue that this was a hoax. Yet the sincerity in that shaky penmanship tugged at something deep inside him. A fear he couldn't quite name. Was this real, or another elaborate trick from a competitor with too much time and money to burn? For years, Logan had drowned out personal entanglements with endless hours at the office. Relationships came and went, none lasting long enough to grow roots in his life. He prided himself on being unattached, free from the distractions that slowed other people down. But as he stared at Oliver's letter, vague memories stirred. There had been a young woman named Carrie once, back when his startup was barely scraping by. She had bright eyes and a laughter that lit every corner of his drab studio apartment. They parted ways when he chose to chase investors on the other side of the country. Could she be Oliver's mother, or was he letting nostalgia paint illusions that had no basis in reality? That night, Logan slept fitfully, his dreams plagued by images of a faceless boy knocking on his door. Each time he tried to speak, his throat constricted, and the dream dissolved into a swirl of guilt. By morning, he'd made a decision. True or not, this letter demanded a response. He called in a favor with an old friend in private security, requesting immediate background checks on any Oliver living within the city. At the same time, he revisited his contact list, searching for anyone who might still know Carrie's whereabouts. It felt strange, poking around in the ashes of a past he'd long buried, but the weight of Oliver's words made ignoring it impossible. If there was even a chance this child was his, he had to know. 2 days later, he received his first lead. There was a boy named Oliver Jenkins enrolled in a modest public school near Queens, living with a single mother who matched Carrie's description. Logan felt his pulse quicken. Even after a decade, he remembered her bright red hair and the dimple in her left cheek when she smiled. The security report was thin, but it confirmed one important detail. Carrie had never married, and Oliver's father was not listed on any official document. Logan's chest tightened with a mix of excitement and dread. If Oliver truly was his son, what would that mean for the life he'd carefully constructed? Would he be able to step into the role of a parent? Or was he already too late? That afternoon, Logan found himself outside a small two-story house with peeling paint on the windowsills. His driver waited discreetly by the curb, but Logan felt exposed under the open sky. This was it, the address tied to Carrie and her son. He hovered by the fence, unsure whether to knock or slip away before anyone noticed. At last, he forced his feet forward. The door opened, and there she was. Time had painted gentle lines around Carrie's eyes, but her hair was still that same vibrant shade. Shock flickered across her face, followed by something close to anger. Before he could speak, she asked, "Why are you here, Logan?" Her voice trembled, as though she already knew the answer. He fumbled for the right words. "I got a letter," he began, unsure how to continue. When Carrie's expression shifted from anger to alarm, he realized she wasn't surprised at all. She was afraid of this moment. She stepped onto the porch, pulling the door shut behind her so no curious ears inside could hear. "I told him not to do that," she whispered, crossing her arms defensively. "But I guess he's as stubborn as you." Logan's heart thumped. So it was true. Oliver was his. 100 questions flooded his mind, but one burned brightest. "Why didn't you tell me?" Her eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and defiance. "Because you left," she said simply. "And by the time I realized I was pregnant, you were gone." All the hours Logan had spent wrestling with scenarios of betrayal and trickery evaporated in that single statement. He left. He chose ambition over the simple comfort of building a life with someone who truly cared. Suddenly, it wasn't Carrie's fault, or Oliver's. The blame rested squarely on his shoulders. "I'm sorry," he said, realizing it was the first time in years he'd apologized to anyone and genuinely meant it. Carrie's eyes flickered, holding a swirl of pain and memories. "It's done," she replied, a slight tremor in her voice. "Oliver just wanted to know you, but I never expected you to show up." Logan swallowed hard, an unfamiliar tightness closing his throat. "Where is he?" he asked gently. "I want to see him." Carrie hesitated, then stepped aside to let him in. The living room was small but tidy, a single couch and a coffee table stacked with school books. Standing in the doorway to what appeared to be his bedroom was Oliver, a slender boy with tousled brown hair and hesitant eyes that mirrored Logan's own shade of dark gray. For a moment, neither spoke. Oliver looked as though he might bolt, and Logan felt his heart pounding in his ears. Finally, Logan managed to smile, though his voice shook. "Hello, Oliver," he said. The boy swallowed. "Logan Pierce," he finished quietly. "I know. I've watched your interviews online." The admission caught Logan off guard, reminding him that Oliver had been the one to reach out first. Here they were, face to face, strangers connected by blood, uncertain how to bridge the gap years of silence had created. Before moving on, please subscribe, like, and share, friends. Logan inhaled slowly, realizing life with Logan took a tentative step forward. Every muscle in his body coiled with tension as he met his son's gaze. Oliver stood there, arms wrapped around himself, as though bracing for the worst. Neither of them spoke for a moment, the silence stretching so taut that Carrie finally cleared her throat softly. "I'll be in the kitchen," she murmured, leaving them alone with a lingering glance of encouragement. Logan swallowed, words failing him the way they never did in boardrooms or media interviews. For once, no well-rehearsed speech could prepare him for the fragile reality of the moment. At last, he managed a quiet question. "Are you okay, Oliver?" The boy blinked, his expression guarded, as though he'd practiced hiding his emotions. "I guess," Oliver said, curling his fingers into the hem of his t-shirt. I've waited so long." Something inside Logan twisted with guilt. He thought back to those early years, the hectic schedule, the single-minded chase after success. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, wishing the words could make up for everything he hadn't known. Oliver chewed on his bottom lip, nodding but not entirely convinced. "You didn't even know I existed," he said, half a question and half an accusation. Logan hesitated, feeling the weight of honesty pressing down on him. "No," he admitted, "I didn't. If I had—" He paused, uncertain how to finish. "You would have been here?" Oliver ventured, his eyes searching Logan's face for confirmation. Logan nodded. "I would have tried," he said softly. "I would have done everything in my power to be there for you, but I can't change the past." Oliver stared at the floor. "Mom tried to protect me, I guess. She said you were too busy, that your work was important." Logan thought of Carrie's parting words on the porch, how she'd described his choice to leave. "Your mom was probably right to be angry," he said, forcing calm into his tone. "I left to chase my dreams, and I didn't look back." The boy looked up, sadness warring with curiosity in his eyes. "Are you still chasing them?" Logan gave a wry smile. "I might always be chasing something," he said. "But it feels different now, knowing you exist." Oliver swallowed audibly. "So, what happens next?" Logan had no immediate answer. In all his strategizing, he'd never planned for fatherhood. Each possibility seemed riddled with complexities that made him question every decision he'd ever made. Finally, he said, "I don't know, but I want us to figure it out together." Oliver nodded slowly, as if accepting a tentative truce. The atmosphere was heavy with unspoken questions, but the tension receded just enough for them to breathe. Carrie returned a few minutes later, her expression a careful blend of wariness and hope. "I'm not going to pretend this is easy," she said, crossing her arms. "But maybe we can talk like civilized adults?" Logan inclined his head. "Of course." He followed Carrie and Oliver into the small living room, where they all sat in an uneasy triangle. "What are you expecting from me?" Carrie began, her tone guarded. "Oliver's letter was his own idea. I told him it might not be a good idea, that it could open old wounds, but he insisted." Logan turned to Oliver, who avoided his gaze. "I'm not here to rip your life apart," Logan said gently. "I just want to know my son." Carrie's stance softened. "So you're not demanding custody or something extreme?" He shook his head. "I'm not about to upend your lives, but if Oliver wants a relationship, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. If that means starting slow, that's fine with me." Oliver finally spoke up. "It was my idea because I've seen your face on magazine covers and news interviews, talking about your company. You seemed like someone who'd never have time for a kid, but I had to know if you'd even care." Logan felt a pang of regret. "I'm sorry you got that impression," he said. "But yes, I care. I'm just new to all this." Carrie exhaled, looking between father and son. "Oliver's had a stable life here. He's happy at school, and he's got friends. If you want to be in his life, we'll all have to figure out boundaries." Logan nodded. "Absolutely, I'm not going to bulldoze my way in. I want to earn his trust." A flicker of relief crossed Oliver's features, though he still looked apprehensive. "So maybe we can hang out sometimes? Not like a huge life change at first. Maybe just weekends or something?" Logan broke into a small smile. "We can do that. Maybe catch a baseball game or visit a science museum, whatever you like." Oliver's eyes lit up. "Really?" "Really," Logan said. Carrie cleared her throat, pulling both their gazes to her. "This is going to be a big adjustment. For you, Logan, and for Oliver. I need to know you're serious." Logan met her eyes, the sincerity in his voice surprising even himself. "I am. I promise." "Then we take it slow," Carrie agreed. "Oliver, is that okay with you?" The boy nodded, relief mingling with excitement. "Yeah, that's good." For the first time in a decade, Logan felt something beyond the thrill of closing deals and the grind of corporate living. He felt an odd spark of hope, coupled with a heavy sense of responsibility. That evening, he left the small house, walking back to his car with a swirl of emotions he couldn't untangle. He was used to forging ahead with confidence, but this situation required something else: humility, patience, and understanding. Once inside the car, he leaned his head back against the seat, exhaling a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Take me home," he told the driver, though he wasn't sure where home even was anymore. His penthouse, or the place where Oliver might someday visit. The week that followed was a blur of negotiations, both in the boardroom and in his personal life. Logan found himself finalizing contracts by day and texting Carrie by night, discussing ways he could spend time with Oliver without disrupting the boy's routine. Their first official meeting as father and son came on a crisp Saturday morning. Logan offered to pick Oliver up and take him out for breakfast, something simple and low pressure. Carrie had her reservations about letting Oliver ride alone with him, but in the end she agreed. When Logan arrived, Oliver stood outside clutching a backpack, looking hesitant but resolute. "Mom says we should have my emergency contacts in your phone," he said, as though wanting to ensure this was indeed going to be safe. Logan nodded, unlocking his phone without hesitation. "Of course, let's put everything in." He handed it over, watching as Oliver typed in his mother's number, his grandparents, and the nearest hospital. The thoroughness made Logan smile, but it also reminded him how serious all this was. They drove to a small diner Logan remembered from his early startup days. Back then, he ate cheap meals at odd hours because every dollar went into his fledgling company. Stepping inside with Oliver felt surreal, as if he were bridging two very different chapters of his life. Over plates of pancakes, they made awkward small talk. Logan learned that Oliver loved space documentaries, collected baseball cards, and occasionally built model rockets in the backyard when he could afford the kits. Each new piece of information thrilled Logan more than he expected. In turn, Oliver asked him about his company and how he got started. Logan explained the hustle of seeking investors and coding prototypes in a cramped apartment. The boy listened, wide-eyed, but also with a hint of skepticism. It was clear Oliver wondered if all that ambition was worth missing out on fatherhood. After breakfast, they strolled through a nearby park. Oliver asked if Logan had always been good at business. Logan laughed, telling him about the early failures, the rejections, and the times he thought about quitting. As they walked, Logan realized that sharing these vulnerable memories felt oddly liberating. At one point, Oliver paused near a playground where younger children were running around. "I used to come here when I was little," he said, his voice distant. "Mom would push me on the swings. I'd see other kids with their dads, and I'd wonder what that felt like." Logan's throat tightened. He wanted to reach out, to promise he'd always be there now, but he was wary of making grand statements too soon. Instead, he placed a hand gently on Oliver's shoulder. "You won't have to wonder anymore," he offered, hoping he could keep that pledge. Before going to next, please remember to subscribe, like, and share, friends. They spent the rest of the day wandering around the city, sharing little bits of themselves. Logan discovered that Oliver had a sarcastic streak and a quick wit, and Oliver learned that Logan, for all his corporate polish, tripped over words when discussing personal feelings. By the time Logan drove Oliver home, a comfortable silence filled the car. It wasn't the silence of strangers, but rather two people who'd spent hours forging a connection. As they pulled up to Carrie's house, Oliver turned and said, "That was cool. We should do it again." Logan's heart lifted. He smiled, nodding. "I'd like that. Whenever you're free." Oliver gave a small wave before heading inside, leaving Logan alone with the faint echo of hope. There were still 1,000 hurdles to overcome: Carrie's lingering doubts, Oliver's fears, and Logan's own uncertainty about juggling fatherhood with an empire. But in that moment, none of it felt impossible. The next morning, Logan found himself at his office earlier than usual. Work had always been his sanctuary, a place where numbers and logic reigned. Now, as he tried to focus on quarterly reports, his mind kept drifting back to Oliver's face. For the first time, balancing the personal with the professional felt like a challenge he wanted to face rather than run from. The phone rang, snapping him out of his reverie. It was Carrie, her voice hesitant on the other end. "Oliver can't stop talking about yesterday," she said. "I just wanted to thank you for being there." The gratitude in her voice warmed him in a way no business deal ever had. "No need to thank me," Logan replied. "I'm just glad I finally have the chance." Carrie paused, as though weighing her next words. "So he wants to know if you're coming to his basketball game on Friday. It's just a rec league, nothing fancy, but it would mean a lot to him." Logan's immediate thought was his board meeting scheduled for that afternoon. Normally, he wouldn't dream of missing it. But now, an image of Oliver scanning the bleachers for a father's face he'd never known tugged at Logan's resolve. "I'll be there," he heard himself say. Another pause. Then Carrie breathed, "Okay, I'll let him know. See you then." Hanging up, Logan stared at the phone. A small smile tugged at his lips. It felt like an invitation into a world he'd never imagined for himself. And for once, business deadlines felt less pressing. That Friday, Logan arrived at the local community center, heart pounding as if he were the one about to perform. The squeak of sneakers on the hardwood floor, the buzz of fluorescent lights, and the scattered cheers from other parents and kids was jarringly ordinary. Yet Logan found it all strangely endearing. He spotted Oliver near the bench, wearing a simple uniform of white and blue. The boy's eyes widened when he saw Logan slip into a seat near midcourt, and he offered a shy wave. Logan waved back, ignoring the curious looks from other parents. Let them stare, he thought. He was here for his son. The game was hardly professional, more a scramble of kids trying their best to dribble and pass, but Logan cheered at every basket. Oliver, though not the tallest, played with a scrappy determination that reminded Logan of the boy's letter, persistent, hopeful. When the final buzzer rang, Oliver's team emerged victorious by a slim margin. He jogged over, sweat beading his forehead, a grin stretching across his face. "You came," he said breathlessly. Logan reached out, ruffling Oliver's hair in a way that felt oddly natural. "I wouldn't have missed it." Carrie joined them, smiling despite the pinch of emotion in her eyes. "He did great, didn't he?" "He did," Logan agreed, nodding proudly. In that mundane gym, surrounded by shouting kids and battered basketballs, Logan felt a sense of belonging he hadn't known was missing. As he stood beside Oliver, he realized that in all his years of climbing financial heights, he'd never experienced a victory like this. A child's proud smile, a warm sense of family. Before they parted ways, Oliver tugged at Logan's sleeve. "Hey, do you think you could help me build a model rocket sometime? There's this kit I've been saving up for, but maybe we could do it together." Logan's chest tightened with a surge of affection. "I'd love to," he said, voice steady. "Just tell me when." Oliver beamed, a look that melted every doubt Logan still harbored. He understood then that fatherhood wasn't about being perfect. It was about showing up, trying, and caring enough to learn from your mistakes. Later that night, alone in his penthouse, Logan stared out at the city lights. He felt something shift deep inside him. Ambition still burned in his veins, but it was tempered by a new kind of purpose. He had someone to share his success with now, someone who believed in him for reasons that had nothing to do with net worth or brand recognition. And for Logan Pierce, that simple truth outshone every accolade, every towering achievement. The following week brought a swirl of new routines for Logan, each moment revealing uncharted territory he had never once considered. One morning, he found himself scanning a list of local science supply stores, hunting down the best model rocket kits for Oliver. Normally, his private assistant handled every facet of his life, from scheduling meetings to ordering rare coffee beans, but Logan wanted to do this personally. He wanted to be the one who walked into the shop, asked questions, and picked out something that would make his son's face light up. The gesture felt almost ceremonial, a declaration that business wouldn't always overshadow the precious slivers of fatherhood he was discovering. After a frenzied day of negotiations with new investors, Logan slipped away early, ignoring the flood of messages that clamored for his attention. The science shop sat on a quiet street outside the city's main hustle, its window display packed with telescopes, chemistry sets, and plastic dinosaur models. An older man behind the counter greeted Logan with a surprised smile. Clearly, he recognized the billionaire from TV. But if he was starstruck, he didn't show it for long, shifting right into an animated discussion about rocket designs and engine types. Logan felt a strange surge of excitement, the kind he used to feel when presenting a groundbreaking product to a panel of venture capitalists. By the time he walked out, he was carrying a sleek mid-range rocket kit and a little extra set of accessories he thought Oliver might like. As Logan drove to Carrie's house, he rehearsed a dozen different ways to hand Oliver the kit, trying to recall if parents generally wrapped gifts or simply gave them. He decided on a casual approach. The moment Oliver opened the door, Logan handed him the bag. "For you," he said, feeling uncharacteristically self-conscious. Oliver peeked inside and let out a gasp of pure delight. "This is awesome." His eyes gleamed as he pulled the rocket kit free from the tissue paper. "You got the advanced engine pack too?" His excitement was palpable, lifting any residual awkwardness between them. Carrie appeared in the doorway, folding her arms with a bemused half-smile. "He's been talking about building a rocket for months," she said. "Thank you for doing this." Logan caught the gratitude in her voice, underpinned by caution. She was still getting used to his renewed presence in their lives. "Mind if I help him build it?" Logan asked quietly. "We can go to the park tomorrow for a launch if it's not too windy." Oliver's face lit up, and Carrie gave a small nod. "Sure. Just be careful with the adhesives. My living room doesn't need any more decoration." They spent the rest of the afternoon hunched over instructions spread across the kitchen table. Oliver read the steps aloud with unwavering focus, while Logan applied glue to fins and carefully aligned them. The table soon became a maze of tiny parts and crumpled paper towels. More than once, Oliver erupted into laughter as Logan nearly glued a tube to his own hand. For Logan, time seemed to slow in that kitchen, the corporate world feeling like a distant planet. He realized with a bittersweet pang that he had never done anything like this before. Yet watching Oliver's determined expression, hearing his exclamations of "Wait, we need the smaller nozzle," or "Check the instructions again," made every clumsy moment worth it. By nightfall, the rocket stood tall on the table, drying beneath a small lamp Oliver had angled just right. "We did it," the boy declared triumphantly, though his eyes were drooping with exhaustion. Logan grinned, placing one last dab of glue to secure the parachute rigging inside. "Yes, we did," he echoed. Carrie pressed a mug of tea into Logan's hand, a silent thank you for keeping their son so enthralled and happy. Outside, streetlights glowed against the dusk, and the hush of a tranquil evening settled in. For Logan, it felt like a dream he was afraid to break by speaking too loudly. When he finally rose to leave, Oliver walked him to the door. "So, tomorrow," "We launch?" the boy asked, stifling a yawn. Logan nodded. "You bet. Get some sleep." Oliver nodded back, stepping forward in a burst of courage to give Logan a quick hug. It was over in a flash, but it left Logan's heart pounding. No business accolade had ever felt this meaningful. He headed home feeling an intoxicating blend of joy and responsibility. The next day, Logan woke early, his mind flickering with excitement reminiscent of a child on Christmas morning. He even skipped his usual black coffee for a lighter roast, something that matched his buoyant mood. But just as he was about to leave for Carrie's house, his phone buzzed incessantly, a string of urgent calls from his chief operating officer. An emergency had flared up in the Asia-Pacific branch, threatening to derail a major international deal. Normally, Logan would drop everything to handle it, barking orders into his phone until the crisis was resolved. Yet in that moment, the rocket launch with Oliver felt equally urgent. After a painful pause, he answered the call. "Give me 1 hour," he told his COO, his tone brooking no argument. "Then I'll be in the office." He arrived at Carrie's house 20 minutes later, an uneasy knot in his stomach. The park was only a short drive away, but the weight of that business crisis pressed in on him like a physical force. He wondered if Oliver could sense his tension. They reached a broad, grassy field, and Oliver buzzed with excitement as he unpacked the rocket, checking every piece. Logan forced himself to stay present. The crisp autumn air smelled of wet leaves, and the golden sunlight cast elongated shadows across the ground. Oliver carefully inserted the engine, then lowered the rocket onto a small launch pad. "We counted the correct charge, right?" he asked. Logan nodded, double-checking the plastic rod that guided the rocket's ascent. Carrie stood off to the side with a camera, a smile playing on her lips. Oliver pressed the ignition button, and the rocket whooshed skyward in a trail of smoke. All three of them craned their necks, watching it climb higher and higher until it was no more than a speck against the pale sky. Then the parachute deployed, and the rocket drifted lazily back to Earth. Oliver clapped, his grin stretching from ear to ear. He broke into a run, chasing after the rocket, as it landed with a gentle thump in the grass. Logan found himself cheering, laughter escaping him before he could think about how out of character it sounded. Breathless, Oliver raced back with the recovered rocket, brandishing it like a trophy. "We did it!" he shouted. "We actually did it!" Logan knelt down to examine the rocket for damage, ignoring the phone buzzing in his pocket. "See? Perfect landing," he said, patting Oliver's shoulder. The boy's eyes shone with pride, and Logan couldn't help but feel a pang at the realization of how many memories like this he had missed. Reluctantly, Logan glanced at his phone. 15 missed calls from his COO, 5 urgent text messages. He knew he couldn't delay the crisis any longer. Rising to his feet, he called Carrie over. "I'm really sorry," he began, regret slicing through him. "I've got a situation at work I need to handle right away." Carrie nodded, understanding in her gaze. "Go," she said gently. "We'll be fine." Oliver's excitement dimmed as he noticed Logan's expression. "You have to leave already?" he asked, disappointment clear in his tone. Logan hesitated. The old version of himself would be in the car already, racing to fix the business meltdown. Instead, he placed a hand on Oliver's shoulder. "Yes, but I'll come by tomorrow to help you do some rocket repairs if you want," he said, struggling to keep his voice light. "I promise I won't bail on you." Oliver nodded, trying to mask his disappointment. "Okay," he mumbled. "Thanks for launching the rocket with me." Logan gave him a quick hug, then made his way to the car. As he drove off, guilt gnawed at him. He hated leaving Oliver on such a high note only to disappear the second trouble called. But this was the reality of the life he led, a balancing act between the empire he'd built and the boy who was fast becoming his primary reason for living. After a frantic drive to the office, he spent the next 9 hours locked in conference calls and crisis strategy sessions. The Asia-Pacific deal was unraveling thanks to a sudden legal snag, and Logan's presence was critical for negotiations. He barked directives, sifted through endless documents, and hammered out an emergency plan. By midnight, the crisis was somewhat contained, but Logan's energy felt utterly spent. He left the office with heavy steps, stepping into his penthouse like a man who'd fought a war. Slumping onto the couch, he checked his phone for any updates from Carrie or Oliver. There was a single text from Carrie. "Oliver's worried you won't have time for him again, but I told him you'll make it work." That short message cut deeper than any business failure could. He realized that despite everything, the fear of being sidelined might always linger in Oliver's mind. And Logan had no one to blame but himself for the boy's lingering uncertainty. Exhausted though he was, Logan tapped out a quick response. "Tell him I'm sorry about today. I'll make it up to him. That's a promise." Then he set his phone aside and stared at the ceiling. Running a global company was second nature to him. He knew every angle, every trick, but fatherhood was a riddle he was only beginning to decipher. The next morning, he woke feeling an urgent need to prove to Oliver that he truly meant his promises. He called Carrie to ask if Oliver would be free in the afternoon. "He's got homework," she replied, "but you can come by and help him if you like." Logan agreed, thinking that maybe helping with homework could be as bonding as building rockets, although far less glamorous. He arrived at the modest house with his laptop under one arm, a bag of takeout under the other. Oliver greeted him in the living room, a math textbook open on his lap. "You really came back," he said, half amazed. Logan nodded, setting the food on the coffee table. "Told you I would, didn't I?" Oliver's lips curved into a small smile. "Yeah, you did." They tackled long division and word problems, Logan's voice occasionally catching when he realized he was uttering phrases like, "No, that's the remainder," or "try a different approach." He remembered countless evenings spent reading quarterly reports, analyzing stock trends, and ignoring the glow of the sun setting outside. This was a vastly different kind of work, helping a child navigate multiplication instead of a corporate fiasco. At one point, Oliver sighed, rubbing his temples. "This is harder than I thought." Logan chuckled softly. "You have no idea how often I say the same thing at work." Oliver peered at him with curiosity. "Even though you're the boss?" Logan shrugged. "Especially because I'm the boss. Responsibility never gets easier, you just get better at handling it." Oliver tilted his head, digesting the idea. They finished up with schoolwork, shared a quick dinner of tacos, and then rummaged through online pages of different rocket models for a possible future project. Logan felt more relaxed than he had in years, even though he knew the Asia-Pacific deal still hung over him like a thundercloud. Oliver's world was simpler, more tangible. In it, trust and presence mattered more than strategic partnerships or shareholder confidence. That night, before Logan left, Oliver gave him another shy hug. "Thanks," he mumbled into Logan's suit jacket. "For coming back, I mean." Logan's throat tightened. "No problem, buddy. I'll see you soon." He walked away with an unspoken vow thrumming inside him. He wouldn't repeat past mistakes. He would show Oliver that his promises were real. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like, and share with friends. Would you like me to? Logan woke the next morning with an unfamiliar sense of calm. Though the Asia-Pacific crisis still loomed, he felt anchored by the fact that he had begun to rebuild trust with Oliver. In the past, his mind would have raced through worst-case scenarios at dawn, plotting out strategic maneuvers before his coffee had even cooled. Now, amid the persistent weight of corporate obligations, he pictured Oliver's eager grin from the rocket launch, the boys' relieved hugs when Logan actually showed up as promised. It was a fragile bond, but it shone brighter in Logan's heart with each passing day. He dressed quickly, choosing a simpler outfit than usual. No need for the most expensive suit when he felt drawn more to real life than boardroom showmanship. The city sprawled below as he stepped into his private elevator. Sunlight threaded through glass towers, and he found himself thinking less about quarterly earnings and more about how best to keep proving to Oliver that he could balance fatherhood with his empire. By the time he strode through the doors of Pierce Innovations, his personal staff could sense a subtle shift in him. He was still efficient, still focused, but he moved with a new sense of purpose, as if his drive for success now ran on a parallel track with something altogether more personal. Once inside his corner office, he dove into calls about the legal wrangling that had endangered the Asia-Pacific deal. The negotiations were tense. Multiple investors demanded concessions, and the local government threatened to impose new regulations that would cripple the project's profitability. Logan's ability to keep a cool head under pressure had always been his greatest asset, but as he juggled various time zones and temperaments, he felt the familiar creep of stress along his spine. He reminded himself that no matter how dire the situation, business problems were solvable. The real stakes, he knew, were waiting for him outside these polished walls. During a midday lull between conference calls, Logan stood by the window, massaging his temples. He thought about Oliver, who would be in school at this hour. The boy would be dealing with pop quizzes and cafeteria chatter, while Logan battled board members and government officials. They occupied such drastically different worlds, yet Logan felt the pressing need to bridge that gap. On a whim, he sent Carrie a text. "Tell Oliver I'm rooting for him today. Just because." A few moments later, she replied, "He'll be happy to hear that. Hang in there." That evening, after the last meeting concluded, Logan felt the weight of the day settle on his shoulders like a physical burden. The crisis had been partially contained, but not resolved. He checked the time, 7 p.m., and a rare early finish, yet the night sky already pressed against the skyscraper windows. Instead of slogging through more paperwork, he decided to drop by Carrie's house unannounced, wanting a slice of normalcy, or at least a reminder of what mattered most. Carrie answered the door, her eyebrows lifting at his unexpected arrival. "Didn't think I'd see you tonight," she admitted, stepping aside to let him in. Logan offered a tired smile. "Long day," he said. "I thought maybe I could see Oliver for a minute, if it's not too late." She glanced at the clock. "He's doing homework, but I'm sure he'd welcome the distraction." She led him to the small dining nook where Oliver hunched over a workbook, pencil tapping restlessly against the paper. At the sound of footsteps, he turned, and his face brightened. "Logan," he said, genuine surprise in his voice. "What are you doing here?" Logan shrugged, taking the seat beside him. "Just wanted to say hi, see how your day went." Oliver set his pencil down. "School was okay, nothing crazy." He hesitated, then pushed the workbook aside. "I'm stuck on this English assignment. We're supposed to write a short poem, but I've never done that before." Logan laughed softly, remembering his own youthful struggles with creative writing. "Need help?" Oliver eyed him with playful suspicion. "You know how to write poetry?" Logan raised his hands in surrender. "Not really, but I'm great at brainstorming. We can figure it out together." They spent the next half hour tossing around random words and phrases, shaping them into lines that, if not exactly Shakespeare, at least resonated with Oliver's experiences. The boy scribbled, erased, and rewrote, occasionally erupting into fits of laughter when Logan's suggestions veered too far into corporate jargon. "No, you can't talk about optimizing synergy in a poem," Oliver teased, rolling his eyes. Logan chuckled, admitting that he needed to switch off his business brain sometimes. Carrie watched them from across the room, a soft smile on her face. The guarded tension she once carried seemed lighter now, though Logan sensed she still had her reservations. After Oliver finished, she approached with mugs of hot chocolate. "For the poetic geniuses," she said, handing them each a mug. Oliver took a sip, gaze darting from his mom to Logan. "He actually made it pretty fun," he said, as if this was a minor miracle. Carrie raised her eyebrows at Logan. "Color me impressed. You might be a better mentor than you realize." Logan felt a small flush creep up his neck. Praise in the business world was second nature to him, but something about approval in a family setting made him feel both proud and vulnerable. "It's not me," he said, ruffling Oliver's hair. "He's the one doing the work." Oliver grinned, splaying his papers across the table so Carrie could read what they'd created. The sense of closeness in that moment was new territory for Logan, sending a warm hum through his chest. He wasn't just an outside observer anymore. He was part of this dynamic, a father, albeit a late-arriving one. Eventually, Oliver had to resume his study routine, so Logan drifted toward the living room, where Carrie followed, arms folded. Her eyes flicked toward the hallway, making sure Oliver couldn't overhear. "He's really taken to you," she said softly. "I'm glad, but I want to be sure you can keep this up." Logan studied her face, noting the faint lines of worry around her eyes. "I know what you're worried about, that I'll vanish if work gets too demanding." She nodded, exhaling. "Yes, that's part of it. The thing is, Oliver's always been good at adapting. He'll handle disappointment, but he shouldn't have to. Not if it's preventable." Logan swallowed. He wanted to reassure her with ironclad certainty, but he also respected her caution. "I've learned a lot in the last few weeks," he said quietly. "I can't promise I won't mess up, I probably will. But I refuse to walk away again. I can balance this." Carrie regarded him for a long moment. "I believe you're trying," she said. "And that means a lot. Just keep trying, okay?" He nodded. "I will." Around 9, Logan finally took his leave. Oliver peeked out of his bedroom to wave goodbye, showing off a silly hand-drawn comic he'd made while taking a break from homework. Logan chuckled, wishing him luck with the poem. As he drove home, the city lights glimmered overhead, reminding him of the myriad people within those high-rise walls. Millions had families and found ways to juggle their responsibilities. He could too. The next few days tested that resolve. The Asia-Pacific negotiations intensified, requiring Logan to conduct multiple late-night video conferences. On top of that, an investor group threatened to withdraw from a new product line if certain conditions weren't met. The old Logan would have immersed himself in back-to-back meetings, ignoring personal calls. But each evening he carved out at least an hour to call Oliver, sometimes just to say goodnight, other times to ask about his day. That small effort seemed to ground him, reminding him there was more to life than corporate maneuvering. One night, after a long flurry of calls, Logan discovered a voicemail from Oliver. "Hey, just wanted to tell you I got an A on the poem. Mom helped me print it out. Thanks for brainstorming with me. Maybe we can do it again." Logan's lips curved into a tired smile, and he saved the message without hesitation. In a world where he'd grown used to discarding most communications, that short recording felt like something worth keeping forever. Late in the week, Carrie called, her voice strained. "We had a bit of an issue at school. Nothing huge, but Oliver got into a disagreement with another kid. Someone teased him about you, called you a show-off billionaire who would ditch him eventually." Logan's gut twisted. "Is Oliver okay?" "He's upset. I don't think he got into a fight or anything, but he came home pretty shaken. He's in his room now, won't talk to me about it." Logan felt a spark of anger on Oliver's behalf, but he forced himself to stay calm. "I'll be there as soon as I can." In less than an hour, he was knocking on Carrie's front door. She pointed him to Oliver's bedroom, and Logan entered quietly, finding the boy curled on his bed, headphones on. When Oliver noticed him, he pulled the headphones off, eyes rimmed with tears that he was fighting to hide. "What are you doing here?" he asked softly. "I heard you had a rough day. Logan said, sitting on the edge of the bed. Want to talk about it? Oliver shrugged. Kids at school say I'm dumb to trust you, that you'll disappear when you get bored. Logan's heart clenched at the hurt in Oliver's voice. I'm sorry people are saying that, he said, but I'm not going anywhere. Oliver fiddled with his phone, not meeting Logan's gaze. They know you're crazy rich and important, so they think this is some kind of game. Logan gently placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. Listen, I can't stop other kids from talking, but I can show you day by day that I'm here. If I let them get to me, we'd both lose. Slowly, Oliver looked up, tears still glistening. You promise? Logan took a deep breath, understanding the gravity of that question. Yes, I promise, no matter how crazy work gets, no matter what anybody says, I'm staying in your life. Oliver nodded, swallowing hard. After a pause, he let Logan draw him into a quick hug. They stayed like that for a moment, father and son forging a bond in the face of outside skepticism. Eventually, Oliver pulled away, wiping his nose on his sleeve. Okay, he said, quieter now. I believe you. Logan ruffled his hair and made a mental note to do something fun that weekend, maybe a trip to the planetarium or a lazy afternoon exploring new rocket designs. Oliver needed tangible reminders that he wasn't alone. He glanced around the bedroom, taking in the posters of science fiction movies, the half-finished Lego sets on a shelf, the baseball trophies from local youth leagues. This was Oliver's world, and Logan would protect it. Carrie stopped him in the hallway as he left Oliver's room. You handled that well, she said quietly. He wouldn't talk to me. Logan sighed. He's worried, and kids at school can be cruel, but I think we're okay for now. She nodded, offering a faint smile. I can see how much he wants you around. Walking out into the cool night air, Logan reflected on the depth of that responsibility. He'd spent years making impersonal choices that propelled him to the top of his industry. Now, every day, he chose Oliver. Every text or promise was personal, emotional, and he wouldn't trade it for anything. The next day, he sent Carrie a text. Free Saturday. Planetarium trip with Oliver if he wants. Her response came quickly. He would love that. Thank you. Saturday morning found them standing beneath the giant arches of the city's oldest planetarium. Oliver looked up at the massive dome with awe, hugging a backpack filled with snacks. Logan paid for tickets, ignoring the side-eye from a few passers-by who recognized him. Inside, they wandered past displays of meteorites and lunar samples, Oliver rattling off facts he'd gleaned from documentaries. At one exhibit, he explained the structure of dwarf planets with surprising clarity. Logan listened intently, peppering in questions. He wanted Oliver to feel that his enthusiasm was valued, not just politely tolerated. They ended up in a dim auditorium where a projection of the night sky arced overhead. The narrator's voice guided them through constellations, distant galaxies, and historical lore behind each shape. Oliver leaned forward in his seat, mesmerized. Logan felt a childlike wonder stir in himself, too. This was what it meant to share experiences, simply being in awe together. After the show, they strolled through the gift shop, Oliver eyeing a telescope kit far beyond the typical child's allowance. Logan crouched down. Do you want it? Oliver hesitated, chewing on his lip. Mom says I shouldn't ask you for expensive stuff. She doesn't want me to take advantage. Logan paused, considering her perspective. She's right about not taking advantage. But this is something we can build together, sort of like the rocket. How about we split the cost? You can pitch in some of your own money if you have any saved up. Oliver brightened. I've got some birthday money stashed away. That'd be great. They shook hands, one official business gesture that made them both laugh, and purchased the telescope kit together. When they got back to Carrie's house, Oliver practically skipped inside with the new box. Carrie watched them from the kitchen, a hint of amusement on her face. "Someone's excited," she remarked. Oliver beamed. "Logan and I are going to split the cost. Isn't that cool?" Carrie's gaze landed on Logan, a silent acknowledgement that she appreciated the boundary he'd set. "Sounds fair," she said softly. "Just don't break the bank, you two." Oliver dragged Logan to the living room to inspect the telescope's parts, the boy's enthusiasm driving away any remnants of worry about schoolyard teasing. They set everything on the coffee table, carefully unwrapping lenses and instructions. When dinner time rolled around, Carrie invited Logan to stay. A simple meal of homemade lasagna. He accepted, feeling oddly at peace as they sat around the small dining table, talking about everything from star clusters to Carrie's latest reading list. The warmth of the moment lingered long after the last plate was cleared away. Later, as Logan prepared to leave, Oliver stopped him at the door. "Hey, can we set up the telescope next weekend?" he asked, voice hopeful. "I need to do some star charting for extra credit." Logan gave a playful salute. "Absolutely, Captain. I'll bring the best star map we can find." The boy grinned wide, stepping back to let him go. "Thanks. Good night." Stepping onto the porch, Logan glanced at Carrie, who walked him out. The two shared a quiet look in the evening gloom. "You know," she began, folding her arms, "I didn't think this would work out. I was sure you'd be too busy or just not interested." Logan felt a pang of remorse for his past absences. "I can't change the start of Oliver's life," he said softly, "but I can be here for the rest." Carrie's eyes flickered with relief. She nodded once, then watched as he headed down the steps. Driving home, Logan couldn't wipe the small smile off his face. Yes, his phone still brimmed with unresolved business alerts. Yes, the Asia-Pacific deal demanded another round of negotiations come Monday. But something in him felt stronger, more grounded. He had glimpsed what it meant to protect and nurture a bond that transcended corporate success. In all his years chasing dreams, he had never known that kind of fulfillment. Logan had grown used to the hush of his penthouse at night, but lately, that hush held less comfort. On evenings when he returned home after spending time with Oliver, the stillness felt almost accusatory, as though the empty rooms were reminding him of all he'd missed. He'd wander past the immaculate kitchen and think about how different Carrie's house felt. Smaller, yes, but brimming with laughter and last-minute homework sessions. In his own space, each shadow on the polished floors seemed to whisper a question he couldn't quite answer. Was building a global empire worth the years of solitude? That Tuesday, he found himself pacing near the floor-to-ceiling windows, phone in hand, as he mulled over the next move in the Asia-Pacific dilemma. It had become a nightmare of clashing regulations and political maneuvering, the sort of challenge he usually relished. Now it drained him. Sleep hadn't come easily in days, and despite the late hour, he considered calling Oliver just to hear a familiar voice. He resisted. The boy should be asleep by now, and instead typed out a short text to Carrie, checking in. She replied promptly, "He's fine, finishing a book for class. Hope all's well on your end." Logan sank onto his couch, letting the phone rest against his chest. He half smiled, picturing Oliver immersed in a new story, maybe pausing to scribble notes on a scrap of paper or dog-ear the pages. That small, ordinary image soothed him more than any business victory could. He realized that for the first time, someone else's routine mattered to him, someone he cared about for reasons that had nothing to do with contracts or acquisitions. The notion was refreshing, albeit tinged with regret, for how long it had taken him to discover this side of life. Bright and early the next morning, he was confronted by his COO with more urgent updates. A potential regulatory ban loomed, threatening to lock Pierce Innovations out of a market that promised billions. Logan's shoulders tensed, and he mentally prepared for another onslaught of frantic negotiations. He found himself glancing at his watch, already planning how to carve out an hour or two that evening if Oliver needed help with any projects. The old Logan might have shelved every personal concern until the crisis ended, but he couldn't ignore Oliver anymore. He wouldn't. Amid the scramble of emails, he caught a message from Carrie. Parent-teacher conference on Friday afternoon. Oliver asked if you'd come. Logan felt a lurch in his stomach. He knew these conferences were an ordinary part of parenting, yet he'd never experienced one. The idea both thrilled and terrified him. Without overthinking, he fired back a quick reply. Of course, I'll rearrange my schedule. A part of him marveled at the ease with which he typed those words, but another part churned with anxiety. Rearranging his schedule during a crisis felt risky, but refusing Oliver's request felt unthinkable. Friday arrived in a blur. Logan carved out the afternoon by rescheduling 2 critical meetings, fully aware that his board members would gossip. Even his own staff seemed curious. Logan Pierce leaving early for a school meeting? It was unprecedented, but he strode from the office, ignoring raised eyebrows, reminding himself that priorities had shifted. When he arrived at the school, he spotted Carrie and Oliver standing by a row of lockers, the hallway crowded with other parents and students. Oliver's face lit up at the sight of him, relief and excitement mingling in that smile. Logan gave a small wave and hurried over, aware of some bystanders recognizing him. Carrie introduced him to Oliver's homeroom teacher, Mrs. Alvarez, a warm-faced woman who quickly ushered them into a small classroom. Oliver perched nervously on a chair and Carrie took the seat beside him. Logan settled in, feeling oddly self-conscious. This was a new kind of spotlight, far from the polished boardrooms he dominated. Mrs. Alvarez began by praising Oliver's enthusiasm in science and reading, commending his effort in group projects. The boy squirmed with bashful pride. Then, more carefully, she noted that Oliver sometimes grew distracted in math, especially when talk at school turned to his father's fame. Logan's heart sank. He glanced at Oliver, who stared at his shoes. "We're working on that," Logan said gently, meeting the teacher's gaze. "I'm trying to be around more so he doesn't feel like everything's up in the air." Mrs. Alvarez nodded, satisfied. "Consistency can help. Oliver's bright. He just needs assurance that the foundation under his feet won't give way." Carrie reached for Oliver's hand, squeezing it in silent support. Logan's chest grew tight. The notion of being a stable presence was so foreign and yet so critical now. They wrapped up the conference, and Mrs. Alvarez thanked Logan for attending, adding, "It means a lot to your son." Her kind smile made Logan realize how small gestures could hold immense value. After they walked into the corridor, still crowded with families, Carrie offered a half smile. "I'm glad you made it," she said. "I know it wasn't easy." Oliver nodded eagerly, looking up at Logan. "Yeah, thanks," he mumbled. Logan glanced at his watch. It was barely 3 in the afternoon. "What if we go celebrate? Maybe a late lunch somewhere? My treat." Oliver's eyes shone. Carrie, checking her own schedule, shrugged. "I have some errands, but you two go ahead. I'll join if I can, but don't wait for me." They ended up at a cozy diner near the school. Oliver devoured a plate of chicken tenders, and Logan sipped coffee, feeling relief ripple through him. "So," Logan ventured, "math is still tough, huh?" Oliver shrugged. "I'm okay at it, but sometimes I lose focus. Everyone at school talks about you, which makes me feel weird." Logan set down his coffee. "I'm sorry about that. I know my job attracts attention, but I want you to know I'm here for you, not just to fix math problems, but everything else too." Oliver studied his face, then gave a small nod. "Thanks," he murmured. "It helps." As they finished eating, Carrie slipped in quietly, apologizing for being late. She joined them for dessert, and Oliver regaled her with Mrs. Alvarez's praises. Logan listened, struck by how comfortable he felt in their company. This was a simple moment, just a family at a diner table. But it meant more to him than any lavish banquet ever had. Carrie put down her fork, meeting Logan's gaze. He did well this semester, but the teacher's right. Consistency matters. Logan read the subtext in her eyes. He'd been stepping up lately, but the real test was whether he'd keep stepping up as crises came and went. A short while later, they parted ways, with Carrie whisking Oliver off to run errands before returning home. Logan sat in his car, the engine off, breathing in a rare sense of contentment. His phone buzzed in his pocket, likely more questions from the Asia-Pacific team. This time, he answered calmly, offering swift directives before concluding the call. He had no intention of being consumed by that problem tonight. Instead, he decided to drive to a nearby sporting goods store, remembering how Oliver had mentioned a school track event coming up. Maybe he could surprise the boy with a decent pair of running shoes. He browsed the aisles uncertainly until a sales clerk helped him pick a quality brand suited for a 12-year-old. On impulse, Logan also grabbed a few pieces of sports gear. Nothing extravagant, just a water bottle and socks in Oliver's favorite color. Exiting the store, he spotted a father and his teenage son in the parking lot. The boy complained about chores, rolling his eyes, while the father rolled his eyes back in mock exasperation. They both laughed, and Logan felt a pang of envy for their easy familiarity. But it also stirred hope. Maybe one day he and Oliver would share that casual ease, the closeness that came from years of trust. Back at his penthouse, Logan set the new items on the counter. He envisioned Oliver's reaction, a grin tugging at his lips. Then his phone rang again. Daniel, one of his top executives overseeing the Asia-Pacific deal. Logan's posture stiffened. "Yes," he answered. Daniel's voice was clipped with urgency. "We've got a serious snag. The local government expects an in-person signing next week, or they'll move on to another partner. They're losing patience." Logan rubbed the bridge of his nose, exhaustion weighing in. "How long do I have to stay if I go?" "Could be a week, maybe 2, Daniel replied. Logan's heart sank. 2 weeks away. 2 weeks away from Oliver. He promised himself he wouldn't run from fatherhood, and now reality tested that vow. "Fine," Logan said, voice subdued. "Schedule the flight, but I need to wrap up personal commitments here first." After ending the call, he stared at the city lights, a pit forming in his stomach. How would Oliver take the news that Logan had to leave so soon? The timing felt cruel, just as they were forging a steady rapport, but this trip couldn't be avoided if he wanted to save the deal and keep thousands of employees from turmoil. Balancing fatherhood and empire building was proving more difficult than he'd imagined. That weekend, Logan made sure to see Oliver. They assembled the new telescope under the open sky in Carrie's backyard, adjusting lenses and fiddling with star maps. Oliver's delight was contagious, and for hours they gazed at distant planets, whispering excited commentary. Even Carrie joined them for a bit, bundling herself in a sweater against the chill. As they wrapped up, Oliver hopped off the small stool he'd been using. "This was awesome," he said, face flushed with excitement. "We have to do it again." Logan forced a smile. Absolutely. But he knew he had to tell them about the looming business trip. His heart pounded as he cleared his throat. "Listen, I have to go overseas for a bit, work emergency." Carrie's expression tightened. Oliver's face fell. "For how long?" the boy asked. "It might be up to 2 weeks, Logan admitted, guilt pressing down on him. "I'll call every day, I promise." Oliver blinked, disappointment flashing across his features. "So you're leaving already?" he murmured. Logan knelt down, meeting his eyes. "I wish I didn't have to, but yes, I'll make it up to you when I get back." Oliver's shoulders sagged. "Okay," he mumbled. Just don't forget about me." Those words sliced Logan to his core, but he resisted the urge to promise what he couldn't guarantee. Instead, he said, "Never." That night, Logan helped Oliver pack away the telescope and the star charts. Before he left, he gave Oliver the new running shoes. The boy's eyes lit up, though overshadowed by his sadness about Logan's departure. They parted with a somber hug, and Logan swallowed the lump in his throat as he waved goodbye. Carrie walked him out. "He'll cope," she said quietly, "but it's rough timing." Logan nodded, words failing him. Driving back to his penthouse, he felt torn between the unstoppable demands of his company and the delicate heart of a child who'd waited too long for a father. The next morning, he boarded the plane with a heavy spirit. As he settled into his seat, he pulled out his phone to send Oliver a quick text. "On my way. I'll call as soon as I land. Remember, you've got this. I'll be back soon." Then he set his phone to airplane mode, exhaling. No matter how high he flew, no matter how many zeros stacked in his portfolio, he now understood that real success meant returning to the one place he was truly needed. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like, and share with friends. Would you like me to? Logan stepped off the plane into a haze of humidity and city lights. The air felt heavier here, dense with traffic fumes and distant spice markets, tinged by the frenetic energy of a metropolis halfway across the globe. Despite the ache of jet lag, he made his way through customs with the efficiency of someone used to constant travel. Yet even as he moved with purpose, a nagging unease curled in his stomach. He was thousands of miles from Oliver, from the fragile trust they were building. Each footstep on foreign soil reminded him that the life he'd known, where travel came first, had quietly shifted beneath his feet. He arrived at a high-end hotel overlooking a skyline that rivaled any major city back home. Checking in, he declined the bellhop's offer to carry his suitcase. He just wanted to reach his room, peel off his rumpled suit jacket, and call Oliver. Once inside the sleek space, he nearly tripped over the plush carpet in his hurry to retrieve his phone. Tossing his luggage onto a chair, he dialed Carrie's number, heart pounding as he waited. The phone rang and rang. Finally, she picked up, her voice hushed. "Logan, it's late here. Is everything all right?" He glanced at the clock on the wall. A bright neon display insisted it was morning, but back home, midnight loomed. Wincing, he said, "I'm sorry to call so late. I just landed. I wanted to see if Oliver's awake." Carrie sighed. "He's asleep. He stayed up late hoping you'd call, but he couldn't keep his eyes open." Guilt pricked him. "I should have called sooner. I had to debrief with the team when I landed." She hesitated. "It's okay. He knows you'll try your best. Want me to tell him you reached out?" Logan nodded, even though she couldn't see him. "Please do. I'll call again tomorrow at a better time." After he hung up, he slumped onto the edge of the bed, staring at the city through the window. The deal he had come for was enormous, enough to safeguard his company for years, employing thousands and securing future innovations. But in the stillness of this foreign room, it felt strangely hollow, without the sense of purpose Oliver now brought to his life. He remembered the boy's disappointed face when Logan broke the news of his departure. Tomorrow, he vowed, he would speak to Oliver directly, no matter the hour or business crisis. Morning arrived in a flurry of high-stakes meetings. Logan found himself in a glossy conference room, flanked by local officials and interpreters. A slideshow outlined obstacles to the contract, peppered with formalities in 2 languages. He forced himself to remain composed, glancing at the clock whenever the discussions dragged. He knew if he failed here, his company would suffer tremendous losses. Yet he couldn't stop thinking about Oliver, how the boy might be heading to school soon, possibly dreading math class or brushing off more comments about having a famous father. When a lunch break was finally called, Logan excused himself to a corner, phone in hand. This time, Carrie answered immediately, her voice more awake. "Logan," she greeted. "Oliver's right here." He heard a shuffling sound, then Oliver's tentative, "Hello," on the line. Relief washed over him. "Hey, bud," Logan said, pushing away the tension of the morning's negotiations. "How are you?" Oliver's voice brightened a fraction. "I'm okay. How's the trip?" Logan gave a mild laugh. "Complicated, but I'm holding up. I miss you, though." A pause, and then Oliver's tone softened. "I miss you, too. Mom said you were super busy. Are you still coming back next week?" Logan swallowed, recalling the uncertain timeline. "I'll try. Could be a bit longer, but I promise I'll come home as soon as I can." The disappointment in Oliver's wordless silence tore at him, but eventually the boy murmured, "All right." Logan asked about school, the new running shoes, and the telescope. Oliver spoke in bursts of excitement about a satellite image he'd found online, but there was an undercurrent of worry that Logan couldn't ignore. Soon, Carrie whispered that Oliver needed to finish breakfast and head to class. They said goodbye, the call ending with a tiny pang in Logan's chest as though some crucial tether had been severed too soon. He pocketed his phone, turning back to a table now laden with local cuisine. His business associates beckoned him to rejoin them, their voices echoing in a swirl of diplomatic chatter. As he forced a professional smile, Logan felt a dull ache behind his ribs, an odd sense of being in two places at once and belonging fully in neither. Days blurred into a cacophony of negotiations, formal dinners, and endless phone conferences. Logan's nights were restless, his body clock in disarray, and his mind stuck in a state of perpetual longing. Meanwhile, Carrie sent updates each evening. Sometimes a picture of Oliver's latest science project, or a short text describing how track practice had gone. Logan savored those messages as if they were lifelines, reminders that despite the polished veneer of these hotel lobbies, something far more important awaited him back home. Yet every day that passed without a signed agreement made him worry that his return would be postponed again. One evening, a crucial piece of legislation in the local parliament was delayed, stalling all progress. Logan's shoulders sagged when he heard the news, his hopes of finishing early dashed. Determined not to let frustration consume him, he holed up in his hotel room, phone in hand, waiting for the time difference to allow a call. Midnight approached before he finally managed to speak with Oliver. The boy sounded subdued. "Is everything okay?" Logan asked. Oliver let out a sigh. "Just had a bad day. Some kids made jokes again about you taking off. I said you wouldn't. I said you're just busy." Logan gripped his phone tighter. "You're right," he said. "I'm not gone forever. I'm coming back." A soft exhale crackled through the line. "I know. It's just, I wish you didn't have to leave." Logan closed his eyes, hating his own choices, yet knowing this was the price of maintaining his empire. "Me too," he whispered. "Soon. I promise." They talked for a few more minutes about small things, his next rocket idea, a film he wanted to watch, before Carrie signaled bedtime. As the call ended, Logan stared at the silent phone, guilt threading through every fiber of his being. The next day, something shifted in the negotiations. One of the higher-ranking officials expressed a new willingness to compromise. Logan pounced on the opportunity, marshaling all his rhetorical skill. By evening, an initial agreement was in place, the final signatures scheduled for the following day. He left the conference room on a wave of cautious optimism. If all went well, he could fly back soon. The taste of success was tempered, though, by a deeper yearning for Oliver's presence, for a promise he could fulfill without disclaimers. He texted Carrie at once. "Looks like I can wrap things up. Could be on a flight in 2 days. Fingers crossed." She responded with a short message. "Oliver will be thrilled." That promise seemed too good to be true, because just as final details were ironed out, a last-minute snag emerged. An opposing political faction questioned the partnership, threatening to derail everything unless more concessions were made. Logan felt an angry burn in his gut. He argued, pleaded, and negotiated deep into the night. By the time he dragged himself back to the hotel, dawn was creeping over the rooftops. Exhausted, he flung himself onto the bed, ironically too wired to sleep. Memories of Oliver's small voice on the phone roiled in his mind. He hadn't even been able to call tonight. With a heavy sigh, he sent a single text to Carrie. Hit a setback. Still trying. I'll call Oliver later. When he finally dozed off, his dreams churned with images of Oliver standing in a deserted airport, scanning empty gates for Logan's arrival. Each time Logan tried to reach him, the boy slipped further away, receding into a fog. He woke in a cold sweat, panic pounding in his chest. Morning light streamed through the blinds, and he realized with a jolt that the day of the final meeting had dawned. This was do or die for the entire venture. If he succeeded, he could leave that very night. If he failed, it might require another week of damage control. The thought made him shudder. Nerves tightened his jaw as he entered the last round of talks. He mustered every ounce of persuasion, hammered out new compromises, and didn't let up until the officials around the table gave reluctant nods of assent. Hours passed, and in a flurry of handshakes and stamping formal documents, the deal was done. Relieved exhaustion flickered across Logan's face. His local staff erupted in quiet celebration, and he forced a smile that was more genuine than he'd expected. He was free to go home. He didn't wait, booking the first available flight out, even if it meant an overnight journey. Before boarding, he called Carrie. "I'll land tomorrow morning your time," he said, voice trembling with relief. "Tell Oliver I can't wait to see him." She laughed, the sound lifting his spirits. "He'll be so happy. Travel safe." The flight itself dragged on, and Logan found no solace in the in-flight entertainment. His mind raced with possibilities, surprising Oliver at school, taking him for a celebratory meal, maybe even finishing that telescope assembly they'd been too busy to finalize. When the plane finally touched down, Logan's fatigue vanished. He moved with determined speed, retrieving his luggage and instructing his driver to head straight to Carrie's house. The morning sun cast long shadows across familiar streets as he urged the car faster. He pictured Oliver still in bed or just waking, and the thought of seeing that stunned smile on the boy's face gave Logan an unfamiliar burst of excitement. He arrived at the front door, heart pounding. Carrie answered, hair slightly messy as though she'd only just gotten up. "You're back," she said, smiling broadly. "He'll be so glad." She gestured for him to step inside. Logan set his luggage by the hallway. "Where is he?" Carrie nodded toward the small kitchen nook. "He's eating breakfast. Go on in." Logan rounded the corner, spotting Oliver hunched over a cereal bowl, hair askew. The boy looked up, spoon paused in midair, eyes widening in shock. "Logan!" he cried, nearly knocking over the milk carton as he scrambled to stand. In a heartbeat, Logan crossed the room, wrapping Oliver in a hug that banished every doubt about the worth of his trip. "I told you I'd come back," he said, voice thick with relief. Oliver's arms tightened around him. "You did," he whispered. "And you're here." They pulled apart, both grinning. Logan sank into a chair across from Oliver, feeling a weight lift from his soul. "So," he asked, attempting a light tone to mask the depth of his emotion, "what did I miss?" Oliver rattled off details of the past week, how track practice was going, how a teacher assigned an ambitious new project. Every word filled Logan with warmth. There, in the modest kitchen with morning sunlight glancing off cereal bowls, Logan felt more at home than he ever had in the penthouse or corporate corridors. Carrie joined them, placing a glass of juice in front of Logan. "You look exhausted," she teased gently, "but I'm glad you made it." He gave a weary laugh. "Me too. That deal was brutal, but I'd rather focus on catching up with this guy." Oliver beamed, hugging his cereal box as though it were some prized relic. "Can we do something today if you're not too tired? Maybe check out the new rocket engines at the science store?" Logan smiled, an easy, genuine motion. "Absolutely. I'd fly back across the world again just to do that with you." Logan spent the rest of that day in a pleasant haze of relief, every fiber of him grateful to be home. He let himself sink into the ordinary rhythms of Carrie's house, the chatter of television in the background, the hum of the washing machine, the faint smell of toast lingering in the air. Whenever he felt the urge to check his phone, to glance at the endless notifications piling up, he resisted, determined that business could wait for once. He'd fought for 2 solid weeks in a foreign country to preserve his company. Now he intended to spend his hard-won freedom with the boy he'd almost lost, before knowing he existed. Oliver could hardly keep his excitement contained, rattling off the latest science experiments he'd attempted, peppering Logan with questions about foreign airports and local customs. Logan answered with laughter in his eyes, amused at how Oliver's curiosity seemed to have no limit. The sense of closeness between them felt warm and startling, like a gift he hadn't realized he was allowed to receive. Carrie watched them from time to time, an unreadable expression on her face, some mixture of pride, relief, and perhaps lingering caution. Logan caught her eye once, and she nodded as if to say, "Keep this up." They drove to the science store that afternoon, Oliver in the back seat tapping his foot against the floor. Logan glanced at him through the rearview mirror, chuckling at how the boy's energy filled the entire car. "Any specific rocket engine you want?" Logan asked, pulling into a parking spot. "Or are we browsing everything?" Oliver grinned. "Let's browse everything, but I do have a favorite brand in mind." Once inside, Oliver flew straight to the aisle lined with model rockets and engine refills. He grabbed 2 different types, eyes alight with that unstoppable spark of wonder. Logan found himself smiling as he read the labels, trying to decipher which engines produced greater altitude or needed special igniters. The old Logan might have scoffed at how time-consuming such small details could be. Now, he reveled in them. When they reached the checkout counter, Oliver juggled the rocket kits with practiced care. Logan offered his credit card, ignoring the faint pang of worry that Carrie might disapprove if she found the purchase too extravagant. Then he remembered the conversation they'd had about boundaries and realized that encouraging Oliver's passion for science was different from spoiling him. The grin on Oliver's face was worth every penny. On the drive home, Oliver chattered incessantly about the new rocket specs, oblivious to the outside world. Logan listened carefully, asking questions to show he cared. Each question coaxed deeper details from Oliver, who spoke about things like altitude ceilings, ballistic coefficients, and how certain rocket paints reduced drag. Back at Carrie's house, Oliver bounded inside to unload the kits on the living room table. Carrie glanced up from the sink, eyebrows rising at the haul of boxes. "Wow," she teased, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Did you leave anything in the store?" Oliver laughed, shaking his head. "Probably not." His excitement was palpable, and Carrie's soft smile suggested she understood how much this moment meant to them both. Logan shrugged, stepping aside to let Oliver show her the boxes. "Just fueling his passion," he said lightly. "I'll take the blame if the yard ends up full of rocket remnants." They spent an hour meticulously checking the components, Oliver reading instructions out loud with serious concentration. Occasionally, Carrie would chime in, reminding him that rocket adhesive could be messy. Logan simply soaked it all in, the easy banter, the sense of a small but genuine family dynamic. It felt right, even though it was still so new. Once they organized the rocket pieces, Oliver looked at Logan with a hopeful expression. "Can we try building one tonight?" Carrie shook her head gently. "It's a school night, honey. You can start it, but let's not plan a launch until you've caught up on your assignments." Oliver groaned theatrically but agreed. Logan offered a consoling smile. "I'll be around," he told Oliver. "We can build them this weekend if that works for you." The boy's eyes sparkled. "Yes." Then he paused, as though recalling that Logan's schedule could be unpredictable. "I mean, are you sure you can stay?" Logan's chest tightened at the weight of that simple question. "I'm not traveling again for a while," he said firmly. "I'll be here." After dinner, a casual affair of spaghetti and garlic bread, Logan helped Oliver tidy the table. Carrie seemed surprised to see him willingly doing chores, but he wanted to prove he was in this for the long haul. As they rinsed plates, Oliver nudged Logan. "Mom's not used to having help," he whispered conspiratorially. Logan laughed under his breath. "Well, let's show her how it's done." When everything was clean, they congregated in the living room. Carrie retired to an armchair with a book, giving father and son room to spread out rocket components on the carpet. They chatted in hushed tones about Oliver's classes, his upcoming track meet, and the lingering remarks some classmates made about Logan's high-profile status. "I told them you're awesome," Oliver said with a bashful shrug, "but they say money changes people." Logan pondered that, working glue along a fin. "Money does change some people," he conceded, "but it can't force you to forget what matters. I'm still learning that." Oliver gave a small smile. "Yeah," he murmured, "me too." They worked until the instructions started blending together, a sign that Oliver needed sleep. Carrie gently ushered her son off to bed, leaving Logan alone in the quiet living room. He considered heading back to his penthouse, but a sudden fatigue pressed down on him. He'd traveled across the world, fought for his company, and all he wanted now was a simple place to rest. Carrie returned, perching on the couch. "He's out like a light," she reported. The corner of her lips lifted in a soft grin. "Thank you for today. He was so excited you came back. It means more than you know." Logan sighed, letting his shoulders relax. "I can't take all the credit," he said. "He's the one who's made room for me. I'm just trying not to mess up." Carrie studied him, her gaze warm but guarded. "And how's that going, with work and everything?" He rubbed his temples. "The deal was tough, but it's done. I can stay local for a bit, tie up some loose ends here. I want to be around for Oliver's life." She nodded thoughtfully. "That's good, but you know your job won't stop being demanding. Are you prepared for that tension?" The question pierced him. "I don't have a choice," he replied. "I want to be a father, and I still have an empire to run. I'll figure it out." A brief silence settled, and then Carrie leaned forward, resting her forearms on her knees. "I never wanted to keep Oliver from you," she said, voice quiet. "But I also couldn't chase you across the country, begging for attention you weren't ready to give. Maybe I made the wrong call back then." Logan swallowed a knot in his throat, guilt and regret tangling together. "I made it impossible for you," he said. "I chose work. I thought it justified everything else." Carrie's expression softened. "I've realized there's no perfect answer. We do what we can in the moment, but now it looks like we have a second chance to do what's right for Oliver." Logan nodded, relieved that her tone carried an undercurrent of hope. "I want that, even if it means adjusting priorities I never questioned before." They exchanged a small, earnest smile before the moment broke. Carrie stood, announcing she had to wake early for errands. Logan realized he'd stayed far later than intended. Gathering his jacket, he made his way to the door. Outside, the night air felt cooler than usual, a crisp breeze hinting at winter's approach. Logan gazed at Carrie's small lawn, illuminated by a solitary porch light. It struck him that he didn't want to be a guest here anymore. He wanted to be part of this household, at least in spirit, if not in actual residence. "See you soon," Carrie said quietly, and he met her eyes. "Count on it," he murmured. The drive back to his penthouse felt longer than usual. Each empty street sign reminded him of how different this neighborhood was from the insulated world of high-rises and private garages. Part of him ached to stay behind, to tuck Oliver into bed, to be present in the small rhythms that made a house a home. When he finally stepped into his penthouse, the place seemed almost sterile. The lights automatically flicked on, illuminating a space that was more a showpiece than a living area. Logan tossed his keys onto the kitchen island, remembering how he'd spent years regarding this room as the ultimate sign of achievement. Now it resembled a glossy photograph with no beating heart. He wandered into his bedroom, tugging off his tie. A wave of weariness overtook him, physical and emotional. Yet beneath that fatigue, a tiny ember of hope flickered. He was here, in his city, near Oliver, forging new habits that tethered him to fatherhood. The following week was marked by small victories. Logan took Oliver to his track meet, cheering alongside Carrie as the boy dashed around the field in brand new running shoes. Oliver didn't place first, but he finished with a personal best, beaming at Logan with unguarded pride. They built a second rocket one evening, launching it in a wide-open park while the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with orange streaks. Each moment, Logan felt the layers of distrust peeling away. Oliver grew more confident in his presence, no longer watching the clock and awaiting an abrupt departure. Of course, the demands of Pierce Innovations never truly vanished. Emails arrived at all hours, and staff kept calling about expansions in other territories. Still, Logan discovered a new mode of operation, dictating that fatherhood was a non-negotiable slice of his life. He arranged his calendar so that key personal events were off-limits for rescheduling. And if a critical issue arose, he handled it either late at night or early in the morning, determined not to snatch away the hours he'd promised to Oliver. One evening, as Logan helped Oliver organize a school presentation on propulsion technology, the boy paused, fiddling with a sheaf of notes. "Mom told me it's okay to sometimes be proud that my dad is, famous," he said, voice tinged with shyness. "I just get nervous sometimes because I don't want to jinx it." Logan's heart clenched. "You're not jinxing anything," he reassured. "I'm not going anywhere." Oliver nodded, half smiling. "I believe you," he whispered, returning to his note cards. Later that night, after Oliver was asleep, Carrie let Logan stay on the couch for a while, sipping tea. She studied him over the rim of her mug. "You've changed," she remarked. "When I met you, all you talked about was the next big project. Now you talk about Oliver's class assignments." Logan chuckled softly, setting his mug down. "He's more interesting than most of my projects anyway." She nodded, eyes glimmering with approval. "I'm happy for him. And for you," she said, her voice gentler. "We've come a long way." Logan felt gratitude swell in his chest, a quiet sense that maybe he was allowed to be more than a figurehead of ambition. Maybe he could be a parent, a friend, and still remain an accomplished leader. It wasn't easy, but the rewards were incalculable. Before he left that evening, Carrie brushed a quick kiss against his cheek, an unspoken acknowledgement of the trust regrowing between them. He felt warmth spread beneath his skin, realizing how much he cherished these small signs of acceptance. Back at the penthouse, he found a string of urgent messages. Instead of falling into old patterns of panic, he methodically responded, confident he could handle each crisis in turn. The unstoppable wave of business concerns no longer felt like the singular focus of his life. He had something else that anchored him, a promise to Oliver, a sense of belonging in that modest home across the city. For the first time, Logan didn't feel torn. He felt sure that in fatherhood he'd found something stronger than any contract or executive success. Winter settled over the city with a quiet persistence, the days growing colder and the daylight hours shrinking. The change in weather did little to dampen Oliver's enthusiasm for rocket launches and track practice, though it meant they had to bundle up and choose their moments carefully. One blustery morning, Logan found himself waiting in his car outside the community center where Oliver often ran laps indoors. The heater hummed as he glanced at the clock, then back to the building's doors. They'd arranged to meet for a quick breakfast before Oliver headed to school, a small ritual Logan had started whenever he could slip away from early meetings. At last, Oliver emerged, cheeks flushed, wearing a thick hoodie and clutching a gym bag. Logan smiled as the boy hopped in, slamming the passenger door shut against a gust of icy wind. "How was the run?" he asked, shifting the car into gear. Oliver's breath formed small clouds as he answered, "Good. I'm getting faster. Coach says I might do middle-distance races in the spring." The light in Oliver's eyes made Logan's chest feel warm. "I'll be there to cheer you on," Logan promised, navigating toward a nearby diner. Once inside, they chose a booth by the window, and Oliver sank into the seat, gazing at the menu as if everything were new and exciting. Logan found himself enjoying this simple routine: hot chocolate for Oliver, coffee for him, and a short stack of pancakes shared between them. Each time Oliver described something about his day, Logan listened intently, consciously reminding himself not to let corporate worries creep into his mind. The phone buzzed in his jacket pocket, but he kept it silenced, ignoring the faint clench in his stomach that asked, "What if it's urgent?" "So," Oliver said through a mouthful of pancake, "I told Coach my dad's kind of a big deal." Logan nearly choked on his coffee. "You did?" Oliver shrugged, a grin quirking his lips. "Well, people already know your name. I can't hide it forever. Coach asked if you'd be willing to, sponsor the team's uniforms or something. He said it could really help." At that, Logan set down his cup. "I'd be happy to contribute, but I don't want you to feel weird about it. Are you sure you're okay with that?" Oliver thought for a moment. "Yeah, it's for the team, not just me. And maybe then people will see you're here for more than just, looking important." Logan's heart caught on the earnestness in the boy's voice. "All right," he agreed. "You let your coach know I'll handle the uniforms. If that helps the team, I'm in." Oliver beamed, stirring extra sugar into his hot chocolate. "Thanks, Dad." The word "Dad" spilled from Oliver's mouth with a casual grace that left Logan momentarily speechless. It wasn't the first time Oliver had used it, but it still stirred something deep inside Logan every single time. He managed a smile in return, hoping it conveyed how much the term meant. That evening, Logan arrived home to find a flurry of work emails regarding a new partnership opportunity with a major tech conglomerate. Typically, he'd have thrown himself into research, hammered out a strategy, and scheduled a barrage of meetings. But now, though he still took the calls and set the groundwork, he carved out the next day's afternoon for a school event Oliver had invited him to, a winter fair that included student exhibits and a small talent showcase. If there was one thing Logan was learning, it was that Oliver's events mattered just as much, perhaps more, than any corporate deal. When he showed up at the school the following afternoon, he found Carrie waiting near the entrance. The hallways buzzed with students and parents, the chatter echoing off the linoleum floors. "He's in the science wing," Carrie told him, offering a warm smile. "They have booths showcasing different projects. Oliver's booth is all about rocketry, of course." Logan followed her down a corridor, pausing every so often to peek at various student exhibits. It struck him how little he knew about such events, having rarely stepped foot inside a school since his own graduation. As they rounded a corner, He spotted Oliver in front of a colorful display, explaining rocket designs to a small cluster of curious onlookers. The pride in Logan's chest surged. Watching Oliver talk passionately about thrust, combustion, and fuel mixtures was like seeing a mirror of his own focus and drive, but directed towards something that made him genuinely happy. After the small audience dispersed, Oliver caught sight of Logan and Carrie. He waved excitedly, motioning them over. "Check it out," he said, pointing to diagrams that showed various rocket stages. "I even have a model on display." He gestured to a small rocket perched on a stand, complete with a labeled cross-section. Carrie snapped a few photos on her phone while Logan read the captions Oliver had typed up. They were detailed, carefully explaining how different fins affected stability. "This is impressive," Logan told him, amazed at the boy's thoroughness. Oliver smiled proudly. "Thanks. I wanted people to see how cool rockets are, not just fireworks in the sky." Across the hall, another parent recognized Logan whispering to a friend. He felt the weight of their stares, but for once it didn't rattle him. He was here for Oliver, not for public approval. The bell chimed, signaling the start of the talent showcase in the cafeteria, so Oliver swiftly disassembled part of his display, turning off any lights or electronics. They moved to the cafeteria, which had been transformed into a makeshift stage with rows of folding chairs. Carrie found seats in the front row, and Oliver declared he'd watch from backstage since he wasn't actually performing. As Logan settled in, he couldn't help noticing how at ease he felt, despite the bustling crowd and the occasional flash of a camera from some parent's phone. Performances ranged from a small choir singing holiday songs to a tap dance routine by a shy student who garnered encouraging applause. When Oliver joined them later, leaning against Logan's side, Logan realized the boy was no longer skittish about being seen together in public. The sense of acceptance gave Logan a soft glow of contentment he hadn't felt in years. On their way out, they stopped at Oliver's booth one last time to pack away the display. A few classmates hovered nearby, nodding at Logan, one even giving a respectful, "Hey, Mr. Pierce." Oliver smirked, bumping Logan lightly with an elbow. "They're starting to see that money isn't all you are," he whispered. Logan laughed under his breath, relieved that this entire scene felt normal. Childish giggles, mild chaos, and proud parents milling about. He realized with a jolt that he wanted more of this life. It was such a stark contrast to the high-stakes realms he normally occupied. When they finally stepped into the crisp winter air outside, Logan glanced at Carrie. "May I treat you both to dinner?" he asked, his breath forming small clouds. Oliver nodded enthusiastically, practically bouncing on his toes. Carrie agreed, and they all piled into Logan's car. They chose a casual Italian restaurant nearby, complete with checkered tablecloths and a cozy fireplace. Oliver dove into a bowl of spaghetti, while Logan and Carrie shared a plate of bruschetta, the conversation flowing about everything from track meets to silly holiday traditions they might try. At one point, Oliver blurted, "Can we do something for the holidays together? Like, I don't know, see some Christmas lights or maybe go skating?" Logan felt his heart lift at the invitation. He'd never really celebrated holidays beyond obligatory parties or polite corporate events. "I'm in," he agreed, a grin tugging at his lips. "I might be terrible at skating, though." Oliver laughed, eyes shining. "We'll figure it out together." A moment later, Carrie's phone buzzed, and she excused herself to the restroom to check on a family matter. That left Logan and Oliver alone at the table, an oddly peaceful silence stretching between them. Eventually, Oliver looked up, fiddling with his fork. "I'm really glad you came to the fair," he said, his voice soft. "You have no idea how cool it was to have you there." Logan swallowed a rush of emotion. "It meant a lot to me, too," he replied. "I never got to do stuff like this with my own dad. I want to be there for you in all the ways he wasn't for me." Oliver frowned slightly. What was he like? The question caught Logan off guard. He rarely spoke of his father, who'd been distant and consumed by his own ambitions. He was... Logan paused, choosing his words carefully. Busy, always working. I guess that's part of why I ended up so focused on success. I grew up believing that was the only thing that mattered. But I'm starting to see that maybe I was wrong. Oliver nodded thoughtfully, as if cataloging that piece of history. You turned out okay, though, he said, offering a reassuring grin. Logan exhaled a short laugh. Thanks, bud. You turned out pretty great yourself. They clinked their water glasses in a playful toast, right as Carrie returned with a pleased look on her face. Apparently, her family matter was resolved. The rest of the meal passed with a light-hearted air. Logan felt so absorbed in their bubble that he barely registered his phone vibrating in his pocket. Only after they left the restaurant did he check his messages and see multiple alerts from his legal team. Carrie noticed his shift in expression. Trouble? She asked as they walked to the car. Logan forced a reassuring smile. Just more business stuff. Nothing I can't handle. He opened the passenger door for Oliver, who hopped in, happily oblivious. Yet as Logan slid into the driver's seat, he felt that old familiar tug, a crisis brewing that might demand his immediate attention. He inhaled deeply, determined not to let it ruin the evening. He turned to Oliver. So, about those Christmas lights, any neighborhoods you've heard are must-sees? The boy rattled off a place in town known for extravagant holiday displays. Carrie offered directions, and they agreed to make an evening of it sometime soon. Logan drove them back, a surge of gratitude coursing through him for these simple plans. At Carrie's house, he walked them to the door, ignoring the persistent buzzing from his phone. Oliver gave him a quick hug, and Carrie touched his arm gently. I hope everything's okay with your company, she murmured. Logan nodded, the tension creeping back into his jaw. It'll be fine. I'll handle it tonight, but I promise not to vanish. Oliver looked at him with worry. Call me if it's something big, okay? Logan tried to smile. I will. Watching them step inside, he felt a pang as the door closed. How quickly he'd grown attached to the sight of them together, waving him goodbye from that porch. On the ride home, he steeled himself, scanning the messages. A major competitor had filed a patent lawsuit that threatened one of Pierce Innovation's newest products. Even though he'd braced for the possibility of legal challenges, seeing it unfold right now felt like a punch. The possibility of a lengthy court battle loomed, threatening to derail months of progress. By the time he reached his penthouse, Logan had slipped back into battle mode, fielding calls from his top lawyers, scanning the initial filings, and drafting a plan of defense. He forced himself to remain calm. In a previous life, he would have locked himself away, working around the clock, maybe even canceling every personal engagement. But now, even as he pored over the legal documents, he refused to consider sacrificing his time with Oliver. He could address this lawsuit without disappearing from the boy's life. That would require delicate scheduling and possibly less sleep. But to Logan, it was non-negotiable. Hours ticked by, and the penthouse's automated lights dimmed to their nighttime setting. The city glowed below. A perpetual hum of life that used to comfort him, used to make him feel less lonely. Tonight, he set aside the legal text long enough to draft a short email to Oliver's coach, offering to sponsor the track uniforms. Then he typed out a text to Carrie, checking if they were safe and warm, and letting her know about the patent mess, in case Oliver heard rumors. Her reply came quickly. We're here if you need anything. Take care of yourself, too. Logan ended his night with bleary eyes but a sense of resolve. He had a battle ahead that could be as draining as any negotiations overseas. Yet he also had a son who depended on him, trusted him even. There was no doubt which priority meant more. He rose the next morning at dawn, chugging coffee before launching into conference calls with the legal team. By mid-morning, he'd arranged a strategy session for later in the week, slotted between Oliver's track practice and a planned outing to see Christmas lights. When one lawyer questioned the constraints on Logan's availability, he replied calmly, "I have commitments I won't break. Let's make it work around them." The lawyer's tone shifted to grudging acceptance. Logan ended the call feeling a flicker of pride that he'd drawn a boundary and stood by it. Later that day, he headed to the community center, ignoring emails dinging on his phone as he drove. He found Oliver in the middle of running drills, sweat beading on the boy's brow. The coach paused practice momentarily to meet Logan, expressing deep appreciation for the offer to sponsor uniforms. Logan waved it off, focusing instead on Oliver's form, calling out encouragements as the boy finished a lap. Oliver flashed a grin, jogging over. "You're here again? That's 2 times in 1 week." Logan rolled his eyes playfully. "Don't get too used to it. My schedule's wild. But I promised I'd show up, didn't I?" Oliver's face lit with that mixture of relief and admiration that left Logan breathless with gratitude. He stood on the sidelines for the rest of practice, cheering Oliver on, high-fiving him between water breaks, feeling that this patch of gym floor had more meaning to him now than any polished boardroom. Whenever his phone buzzed, he glanced only to ensure there was no immediate crisis before slipping it away again. Eventually, practice concluded, and Oliver trotted over, panting lightly. "Mom can pick me up soon," he said. "But maybe next time we can race each other." Logan burst out laughing. "Me? Run against you? You'd beat me in a heartbeat." Oliver shrugged, mischief in his eyes. "I won't go easy on you." Logan reached out and ruffled his hair. "That's the spirit." As they walked out, a swirl of cold air greeted them. Oliver smiled up at Logan. "Thanks for coming, Dad." Logan paused, letting the word resonate again, feeling a surge of emotion that nearly knocked him off balance. "Anytime, son," he managed, voice quieter than usual. "Anytime." 2 days later, Logan found himself perched on the edge of Carrie's living room couch, surrounded by stacks of paperwork. Winter's chill pressed against the windows, but the hum of the heater offered a cozy shield against the biting cold outside. Oliver sat cross-legged on the floor, fiddling with the rocket parts they'd begun assembling earlier in the week. It was late afternoon, and the subdued winter sunlight drifted across the carpet, bringing a soft glow to the otherwise ordinary scene. A barrage of phone calls had followed Logan here, the patent lawsuit looming large over every conversation. Yet instead of barricading himself behind a locked office door, he'd chosen to handle the calls in the presence of those who mattered most. Whenever Oliver looked up with a question about rocket adhesives or fin angles, Logan muted his phone and gave him his full attention, forcing his anxious mind to switch gears. It wasn't easy. He could practically hear the tension in the voices of his legal team, each of them pushing him to treat the lawsuit with top priority. But each time they demanded an immediate meeting, Logan responded with a firm directive. "We'll talk tonight or early tomorrow. I'm with my son right now." Carrie, bustling in from the kitchen, cast him an approving look. She balanced a tray with 2 cups of hot chocolate, setting it down on the coffee table. "You look like you could use a break," she said softly, handing him one of the mugs. "Any progress on that lawsuit?" Logan offered a small, tired smile, grateful for her thoughtfulness. "Progress is slow," he admitted, inhaling the steam that rose from the chocolate. "We're gathering evidence that our designs predate anything the competitor claims, but it's a mess." Oliver glanced up, placing a half-glued fin on the table. "If it's that big a deal, maybe you should work on it," he said, shifting uncomfortably, as though he hated suggesting Logan leave. "I mean, you don't have to stay here just because of me." Logan's chest tightened at the uncertainty in Oliver's voice. He reached out, gently ruffling the boy's hair. "I appreciate that," he said, "but your project is just as important. We'll handle the big stuff in chunks." He cast a meaningful glance at Carrie, who nodded, understanding the delicate balance he was trying to maintain. They worked steadily for another half hour, Oliver meticulously reading instructions while Logan helped align the rocket parts. Occasionally, Logan's phone would vibrate, prompting him to pause and send a quick text to his legal team. Each interruption reminded him how precarious his dual commitments were, but the steady rhythm of gluing fins and discussing launch angles kept him grounded. When the rocket body finally took shape, Oliver stepped back, admiring their progress. "We're getting pretty good at this," he declared, flashing a bright grin. Carrie peered from behind them, sipping her own hot chocolate. "So, how many rockets have you two built now?" she teased, gesturing at the numerous tubes and fins scattered around the living room. Oliver beamed. "This is our fourth. We've improved each time." Logan couldn't help but smile at Oliver's satisfaction. "We'll have a proper fleet soon," he joked, but deep down he savored the growing trust in Oliver's eyes whenever they worked on these joint projects. Eventually, Carrie reminded Oliver he had homework to finish, so the boy gathered his supplies and marched off to his room. That left Logan and Carrie alone in the living room, the hum of the heater filling the comfortable silence. Logan leaned back against the couch cushions, letting out a long exhale. "I feel like I'm juggling knives," he murmured, "but every time I see him smile, it's worth it." Carrie tucked her legs beneath her, settling beside him. "You're doing a good job," she said gently, resting a hand on his arm. "Oliver hasn't been this content in ages." Logan closed his eyes for a moment, relief mingling with exhaustion. "Thank you," he whispered, turning to look at her. "I just hope I'm not messing it all up by dividing my focus." Carrie's expression softened. "He knows you have responsibilities. I think it means a lot that you're trying. You can't shield him from every disappointment, but you're showing up. That's more than many parents do." She paused, her gaze drifting to the scattered rocket pieces. "And honestly, it's nice having you around." A gentle warmth spread through Logan's chest at those words. They stayed like that for a moment, each content in the unspoken bond forming between them. Eventually, the phone in Logan's pocket buzzed again, a final reminder that his legal meeting loomed. He pressed his forehead with his palm, steeling himself. "I should get going," he said, standing reluctantly. "We have a video conference in an hour, and I need to review some documents before then." Carrie accompanied him to the door, a softness in her eyes. "Thanks for coming over," she said, her voice low, "and for making Oliver feel like a priority." Logan leaned in, brushing a light kiss against her temple. "He is a priority. So are you." Her cheeks tinted with a rosy hue that might have been the cold air drifting in through the open door. He drove to his penthouse, mentally switching into work mode. The swirl of the city lights outside his car window felt less lonely tonight, as though the knowledge that Oliver was safe at home gave him an invisible anchor. Once inside, he poured himself a quick cup of coffee, kicked off his shoes and settled in front of his laptop, scanning the latest legal briefs. The competitors' claims were extensive, citing obscure patents that dated back several years. Logan's lawyers believed they could dismantle the argument, but it would require combing through years of design logs. When the video conference began, Logan focused his considerable intellect on the details. He questioned each point vigorously, ensuring no angle was missed. The meeting dragged well into the night, tension crackling over the speakerphone. His attorneys insisted this could be a year-long battle if it went to trial. Logan's jaw tightened with each mention of time lost, money burned, and potential brand damage, yet he refused to let panic seize him. He'd built Pierce Innovations from nothing. He could defend it. The meeting ended close to midnight. Logan's eyes burned from staring at screens, and his thoughts churned restlessly. He knew Oliver would be asleep by now, so there was no point calling. Instead, he texted Carrie, "Meeting done, going to crash. Tell Oliver thanks for letting me help with the rocket. See you both soon." A response blinked back almost immediately, surprising him. "Good night. He had a nightmare about you not coming back last time you traveled, but he's okay now. Just keep reassuring him." Logan stared at the message, a dull ache throbbing behind his sternum. He recalled the worry in Oliver's eyes whenever the boy sensed Logan might slip away for another indefinite trip. He typed back, "I'm not leaving him again if I can help it." Then he shut off his phone, letting the darkness and quiet of his penthouse swallow him. The next morning, a swirl of new demands confronted him at the office. In addition to the patent lawsuit, rumors spread of a hostile takeover attempt, an opportunistic competitor looking to exploit Pierce Innovations' vulnerability. Logan shot down the gossip, rallying his executives for a meeting. "We're not folding," he said, voice firm as he paced the boardroom. "Step up our defensive strategies, reassure our partners. I'm not letting this fiasco derail us." His usual charisma carried extra weight now, fueled not just by ambition but by the sense that Oliver needed him to protect what they were building. This life that balanced success with genuine family bonds. In an odd way, fatherhood sharpened his resolve, reminding him there was more at stake than bragging rights or financial gains. The company had become part of his legacy, a future he wanted Oliver to be proud of, not just a fortress of solitary wealth. By midday, Logan had hammered out a plan to refute the takeover rumors and coordinate a robust legal defense against the patent claim. Though the crisis was far from over, he felt a fresh surge of determination. Taking a chance to breathe, he stepped into his private office and called Carrie, praying she'd answer. Her voice sounded relieved. "Busy day?" she asked wryly. "You have no idea," he said, sinking into his chair. "But I'm pushing through. How's Oliver?" Carrie's voice took on a lighter note. "He's good. Excited about finishing that rocket. Said something about testing a new engine design this weekend. Are you free?" Logan glanced at his calendar, mentally juggling several pressing commitments, yet he resolved to make the time. "Yes," he said, unwavering. "I'll be there." That Friday, Logan left the office earlier than usual, ignoring the mild uproar from subordinates who wanted more direction on the lawsuit. He reminded them that a key principle of leadership was delegating. They could handle the preliminary tasks without him for one afternoon. He had a rocket to launch. As he pulled up to Carrie's house, the sight of Oliver on the porch wearing gloves and a heavy jacket warmed Logan's tired heart. Oliver waved with uncontained excitement. They drove together to a large open field just outside the city, where a few other hobbyists sometimes launched model rockets. The air bit at their cheeks, but the sky was mercifully clear. They set up the launch pad while Carrie watched from the sidelines, huddled in a thick coat. Oliver meticulously double-checked each part, running through a mental checklist he'd written out. Logan crouched beside him, offering a steady hand whenever needed. At last, the rocket stood upright, a slim silhouette against the gray winter sky. Oliver plugged in the ignition wires, turned a small dial, and gave Logan a grin. "Ready, Dad?" The word "Dad" again brought a lump to Logan's throat. He forced a smile. "As I'll ever be. Go for it." Oliver pressed the launch button. A hissing roar erupted as the rocket shot upward in a stream of white smoke, climbing fast into the cold air. All three of them craned their necks, breath hitching collectively. When the parachute deployed, Carrie let out a small cheer, and Oliver whooped loudly. The rocket drifted back to Earth, swaying in the chilly breeze. They all chased after it, laughing as they stumbled through the uneven ground. Oliver reached it first, scooping it up with a triumphant laugh. The nose cone was slightly scorched, but otherwise intact. "Success!" he exclaimed, holding the rocket aloft. Carrie caught up, her cheeks flushed. "That was incredible," she said, turning to Logan. "You two are getting good at this." Oliver beamed, hugging the rocket to his chest. Next time, we should try a dual-stage engine. Logan felt a wave of contentment wash over him. Moments like this made him believe that everything, his corporate empire, the lawsuits, the ceaseless demands, could be balanced if he just refused to sacrifice family at the altar of ambition. With the rocket safely stored in the trunk, they decided to celebrate with a hot meal at a nearby diner. The warmth of the diner's interior welcomed them, condensation fogging the glass doors as they entered. While they waited for their orders, Oliver opened a small notebook filled with sketches of rocket designs. He showed Logan a few new ideas, complete with annotated measurements. "I got these from reading an online forum," he explained eagerly. Logan nodded, scanning the neat handwriting. "You're serious about this, aren't you?" Oliver shrugged modestly. "Yeah, maybe I'll be an aerospace engineer someday. Build real rockets." Logan leaned forward, eyes bright. "I believe you can. If that's what you want, I'll support you every step of the way." Oliver's grin softened into something more heartfelt. "Thanks, Dad," he whispered, flipping the notebook closed. Carrie observed them with a soft smile, twining her fingers around her mug of tea. It felt like a scene out of a future Logan had never expected to inhabit. The three of them sharing small victories, forging bigger dreams. Later, after dropping Carrie and Oliver at home, Logan paused on the porch. He gently cupped Oliver's shoulder, feeling the boy's warmth through his jacket. "Today was awesome," he said, letting sincerity echo in each syllable. Oliver nodded. "Yeah, it really was." A subtle hesitation crossed the boy's face. "You'll still be around this week, right? Even if stuff with the lawsuit gets worse?" Logan crouched, meeting Oliver's gaze. "I'm not going anywhere," he promised softly. "We'll handle the lawsuit, but I'm staying right here no matter what." Oliver exhaled, relief plain on his face. "Okay," he murmured. "Then I guess we're good." They exchanged a brief hug, and Logan offered Carrie a thankful nod. As he drove off, the sky darkened with an approaching winter storm, but his heart felt light. Maybe the path wasn't easy, and maybe crises would keep coming, but for the first time in his life, he believed he could meet them without sacrificing what mattered most. Over the next week, the city was battered by storms, churning gray skies overhead and layering sidewalks with slippery ice. As conditions worsened, Logan discovered an unexpected delight in how the weather nudged everyone to slow down. Instead of rushing off after every phone call, he found himself lingering in Carrie's warm living room or helping Oliver salt the steps outside. Each small task became a chance to stay connected, to show Oliver he cared about the mundane realities of everyday life. Though the swirling snow brought delays and the occasional power flicker, it also created a space for them to savor each other's presence. With the outside world slowed by ice, Logan immersed himself in fatherhood with a determination that sometimes startled him. He arrived early to Oliver's track practice, joking that the new uniforms would look even better with unstoppable runners inside them. He fielded calls from angry investors in the bleachers, politely reminding them that their crisis was not his only focus. When practice ended, Oliver bounded over, cheeks flushed, thrilled to see Logan unruffled by the day's demands. Carrie, who often came to pick Oliver up, would catch Logan's eye, sharing a conspiratorial smile that hinted at gratitude. They were forging a quiet, steadfast partnership. Day by day, the patent lawsuit and rumors of a hostile takeover chipped at Logan's time. Yet he managed to shield Oliver from much of the drama, ensuring the boy's days remained filled with science experiments and small victories at track meets. The lawyers updated him relentlessly, cautioning that a settlement might be safer than a lengthy trial, but Logan refused to budge. "We protect our intellectual property," he told them, voice steely. "I won't reward baseless claims." Though tension gnawed at him late into the night, each morning he re-centered himself on fatherhood. The sense of purpose it brought steadied him more than any corporate reassurance. One snowy afternoon, Oliver's school hosted a winter festival, complete with games and a bake sale. Logan attended, wearing a wool coat and a determined grin. Parents and teachers recognized him, but he spent more time helping Oliver sell homemade brownies at a crowded table than talking business. Whenever he thought about the lawsuit or the takeover, he forced those thoughts aside, returning his focus to Oliver's bright chatter. By evening, they'd sold every brownie and donated the proceeds to the school's science program. Oliver was elated, hugging Logan in front of everyone. For once, Logan felt no need to hide his own exhilaration. But the winter festival glow soon gave way to another wave of corporate tension. One of Logan's top shareholders demanded an urgent meeting, claiming the patent dispute threatened profits. Logan stood firm, refusing to compromise the integrity of Pierce Innovations. That night, slumped in his penthouse, he reread old design documents until his vision blurred. He recalled how, before Oliver, he would have turned into a near-robotic work machine, ignoring every personal need. But now, as exhaustion tugged at him, he wondered if it was worth destroying himself and his new family bonds just to win. The answer, increasingly, was no. A breakthrough emerged the following week when new evidence surfaced. An old prototype blueprint bearing a date that predated the rival's patent claim. Logan's head attorney called at sunrise, voice brimming with triumph. "We found it in archived emails," she explained, "and it proves we were first." Relief surged through Logan, followed by a wave of fatigue. As soon as he hung up, he texted Oliver a simple message: "Big news. We might be winning." Then, in a fit of impulsive joy, he called Carrie, voice stumbling with excitement. She congratulated him, but asked the question that truly mattered. "So does this mean you can breathe now?" Logan laughed, realizing how seldom he allowed himself to do that lately. "Maybe," he said, leaning against his penthouse balcony. Snow glimmered under early sunlight. "We're not fully out of the woods, but this blueprint could shatter their entire argument." Carrie's breath crackled through the line. "I'm glad," she said, voice warm. "Oliver will be over the moon." That afternoon, Logan picked Oliver up from school, the boy bounding into the car with excitement. "Mom told me," Oliver exclaimed. "So it's almost done?" Logan explained they still had legal steps to finalize, but their position was infinitely stronger. Oliver grinned. "I knew it." As a celebratory gesture, Logan drove Oliver to their favorite science store, letting him pick out a new rocket engine. The boy's eyes shone with possibility. "Let's do a night launch," he suggested. "We can use glow-in-the-dark paint." Logan agreed at once, enthralled by the idea of painting the rocket and watching it streak through a star-speckled sky. That evening, they huddled in Carrie's garage, carefully applying neon paint to the rocket's fins. Oliver kept the brush steady, determined to get each coat just right. Logan found himself marveling at how fully he relished these moments. No boardroom, no conference, just the simple joy of shared invention. Midnight found them in a deserted field, breath fogging in the sharp winter air. Carrie stood at a safe distance, phone camera ready to record. Oliver counted down, pressing the ignition button. The rocket roared upward, ablaze with neon streaks that glowed eerily in the darkness. All three tilted their heads back, gasping as the rocket soared higher than any they'd launched before, a dazzling arc set against the midnight sky. When the parachute deployed, Oliver whooped in triumph, Logan's laughter echoing loud. Nothing about the moment felt small. In the hush that followed, Logan locked eyes with Carrie, and a mutual understanding seemed to pass between them. They retrieved the rocket from where it had drifted, the glow still faintly pulsing. Oliver clutched it like treasure, a grin etched across his face. On the way back to the car, Logan realized he'd never felt more certain of his place. Leading Pierce Innovations mattered, But these moments with Oliver and Carrie were the real currency now. Each day, each shared triumph, reaffirmed the decision he'd made to stay. That weekend, final proof of their patent victory arrived. The rivals' claims collapsed under Logan's documented blueprints. Cheers erupted in the boardroom, and Logan phoned Oliver right away. The boy whooped, saying they could finally celebrate without any looming lawsuit. Indeed, takeover rumors died, freeing Pierce Innovations to move forward. Instead of hosting an opulent business gathering, Logan arranged a family-friendly arcade night, inviting employees and their children. Oliver proudly introduced him to air hockey and racing simulators, laughter replacing any corporate tension. Carrie watched from across the room before joining Logan. "You did it," she said, tipping her head toward the relaxed crowd. "You saved your empire without losing yourself." Logan smiled. "It took me long enough." He nodded at Oliver, who was challenging a co-worker's kid on a dance machine, arms flailing in gleeful chaos. "I have better reasons now," he added. Carrie slipped her hand into his. They weren't a traditional family, no rings, no simple story, but they had something deeply real. Later that evening, Oliver and Logan settled in Carrie's living room, scrolling through photos from the arcade. Oliver paused on one where Logan stood behind him, arms raised in triumph, both grinning. "Mom took this," Oliver whispered. "We look happy." Logan rested a hand on Oliver's shoulder. "That's because we are," he replied. In the quiet that settled, a warmth rippled between them, a promise fulfilled, a bond forged in rocket launches and unwavering belief. Carrie joined them, slipping onto the couch. In that hush, they understood how far they'd come and how far they could go. Tomorrow would bring new problems, fresh tasks, but for now, father and son basked in the glow of a life they were finally living together.